Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at logging out of our application and implementing some other bits and bobs, like adding the role to our profile, improving the login redirect callback, and adding certificates so we can resume using Google Chrome on HTTPS on our local environment, right? So we got quite a bit to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the controllers. I'm going to create a controller which we can hit in order to sign out from our application. Okay, so in here, let's go ahead, add a class. I'm going to go ahead and call it auth controller. On here, let's inherit from base or controller base. I don't think we'll need a constructor. I will still add API controller to it, and for the route, I will do /API/auth, and then we just need an HTTP GET where we can say logout. Okay, this is going to be a public action result, and we can call it logout, right? There is going to be a parameter that is going to be passed to it, which is logout ID, which is basically for IdentityServer, because there can be many different clients. So basically, the oidc-client can supply a logout ID to this endpoint, which will basically allow us to discover which URL to redirect back to. Okay, so this is going to be passed as part of a query. Let's put it back on that line, and what I want to grab from services is my sign in manager, identity user, and let's just call it sign in manager. Next one from services, what I want to do is, I just know this is called interaction service. So IdentityServer interaction service, let's call it interaction service here, and we will close this off, right? So two services, sign in manager to sign out, interaction service to discover the post logout redirect URI when we log out. Okay, so first things first, we take the sign in manager and we sign out async, right? And we'll need to await on this and not sign in, sign out async, and await. We will need to turn this into a task. Okay, so the next bit is on our interaction service. We'll do get logout context async, and here we'll provide logout ID. So logout context, we don't need to call it async, we can just call it logout, and then we will await on this. So in the logout context, what we can grab is the post logout redirect URI and check if this is null or empty, right? If it's null or empty, we want to handle this condition. So for now, I'll return bad request, but the user will still be signed out. Otherwise, what we will do is we will return redirect to logout context post logout redirect URI. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So first thing, we sign out, and then we basically resolve where we want to return after we sign out, and do we actually have this logout ID. So next thing to do is kind of to let our identity server know where this logout path lives. So in our startup, same as we have set, let me find this configure application. Oh, there it is. Comfortably formatted itself onto one line, so it's hard to spot. But config logout path, same as we did the login path. Let's go ahead and set it to API, auth, and logout, right? Nothing too complicated. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace claim types role, right? So public struct, and this is just something like a general cleanup scenario. Okay, so let's put the const string here, and I'll just say role and role. Nothing too crazy, and now we can utilize this. So let's put this here, roles, and not roles, sorry, claims role. So role claim, let me drop the other one on the new line so it's a little bit easier to see. We will need to go into program where we have used claim types role as well for seeding our user, and put this here. And again, I'll just drop this down to a new line so it's a little bit easier to see. And yeah, maybe it could take that out into its own variable, but I mean, it's not that important really. So we got the logout endpoint, we got the new roles that we've set up, and we made sure that we configured the logout path. Now let's go ahead and see if we can implement a button to log out from our application, right? So again, same as before, let's go onto our index.view, and in here near the login button, we're just gonna copy it, we're gonna paste it here, and we're gonna say logout. And here we're going to sign out redirect, okay? And this should pop us back onto the URL, onto the, what's it called, the post logout redirect URL, right? We specify this URL here, we specify this URL in the startup right here, okay? So it knows where to redirect us. So let's go ahead, add this button. So where we have the login, let's copy this and we'll say logout. Logout, okay. And now I don't actually have a browser open, so let's go ahead, get this guy here. Okay, opening two of them. For good measure, open the console, always check for errors. Let's go ahead, sign in first, test password will do. And again, we need to be using a good browser. So let's go ahead and use 3000. Let me close that one. We'll sort it out later. So again, yeah, test password, and the code should get processed. It does get processed. And next thing, what we want to do in the console, let's just basically API test auth. We can hit the test. Let's try logout. Not much. It seems like not much has happened, but our user is not getting loaded anymore, and we have logged out. The next thing to check is, are we still signed in on the other application? So if we go here, we are going to get a 404, but what we can actually do is we can still check the cookies, I think, and just to be sure, go to account/login. So this should display a page, but the sign-in cookie is no longer here, so we are signing out. So that was pretty easy. The other couple of things that I wanted to take care of is, let's get back here and let's sign in again. And this time we're going to sign in as mod. And again, we are going to sign in here. We are going to get the token, but the main thing here is that in the future, what I want to do is I want to change the UI based on the role. So what is important is, once we get the user information, we do know what user it is, and we do know basically his name, but we don't actually know the role that he is in. We know the role is attached to the access token, because if we call the endpoint, that should have worked. So again, if we are expecting a 403, first thing to check is, that we got the correct claim. So let's go ahead and go through the procedure again. So because we changed the claim to be role this time, you can see that it's actually not included. So this is something that I forgot to change in Startup CS. If we go down here, when I said require this claim, and I've changed the claim that we actually register with identity right here, I am no longer pulling through the same claim in my API scope. So here, claim types and role, right? So let's drop this to a new line here and put it here. That should fix that issue, but the bottom line is that we do put this role for the access token, but we also want to vary the UI. So we actually want to include this role in our ID token, and so it's extracted with the profile information. So let's create that as a separate area. So we're going to create a new scope. Okay, so a new identity resource. And for our identity resource, let's go ahead, copy the name there, and we'll go down here to our struct. I'm going to close the menu there for a second so we don't have to look at it. So public struct identity resources. And here what we're going to do is we're just going to, again, specify the name role. And this is just so we can have a little bit more of a structured way accessing this stuff. So when we created any resource here, what we want to do is we want our tracking library constants, identity resources role, and then we want to, same as with our API scope, again, if we press F12, we will see that the enumerable of users claims that we can pass, it's basically going to grab the identity claims and attach them as a profile or whatnot. So let's just copy this real quick, and what we're going to do is which claims do we actually want to select. So, and this is going to have to be a new array here, and that should get dropped down to a new line. So nice. Okay, so with that going forward, let's come back. Let's go back here. Let's log out. So we have a convenient function this time to just sign out. That is nice. Let's go to login mod password. Okay, and we're back here. So going back to the network tab, if we take a look at the user info endpoint, the information is not there. Let's double check the profile for the user that's actually extracted, and they're all not here either. However, the API mod auth is actually returning the mod, and again, so this is again my mistake. And I guess, I mean, it's good to learn because, you know, stuff is missing. How do you add it in, right? So we added an additional scope that we can request, which is going to include whatever value our role claim holds. So in the test user's case, there's going to be none. In the mod user's case, it's going to be mod. So we've added the identity resource. This is something that we can request. We actually need to, pointing to the wrong place, allow the client to request this scope and then actually request it, right? So let's go ahead and put this here, right? So identity resources role, we can call this scope to kind of align with that name, or let's rename role to role scope, okay? And dropping down here, instead of name of, what I will do is I'll just give it a role. All right, so going back to the index page, dropping down to where our configuration is, let's go ahead and request this scope as well. Okay, so going back to the browser, we're gonna log out again, clear the state, we're gonna log in again, and again we're gonna go in as mod password, and here we are. So now taking a look at the network tab, user info, and there's our role. So unfortunately, it is in capital case. So what I'm going to do, because we're not going to be doing any implementations of UI manipulation based on a role yet, what I'm just going to do is for this claim specifically, again, I'm just going to put it to lowercase roles, okay? The other stuff can stay. I just think I like consistency, okay? But this is pretty much it, and we'll leave it like that. So let's log out. And the next thing that I want to take care of is the sign in redirect. So the way that we're processing this now is if I close the rest and we're just going to focus on this index.view. It's this part here. So first, the whole application has to be loaded, and then we are signing the user in. So this can prove difficult to initialize our application because we kind of want to initialize, check the storage, but then after the initialization, that's where we can actually try to sign in, and then we have to reinitialize. So what we want to do is we want to take this middle bit, this bit that I have highlighted there. It's kind of sitting in the middle between initialization and the usability of the app. And what we want to do is we want to take this bit out because it's crucial to the initialization part working, because we might have an authenticated user, we might not. So, and we want to kind of move it over here, right? So before it. So what we can do is we can first redirect to a static page that's the sole purpose of which will be to process the code and basically the response URL. So let's go ahead and do that. For this, we're going to go to the static pages. We're going to create a directory, and we're going to call it, let's call it oidc. And in oidc, we're going to call this, we're going to create a new HTML page, and we're going to call this sign in callback. Yeah, I think that's okay. So for the title, let's just say authenticating. We don't need to display anything, but let's just do like triple dots as in like loading. And then for our scripts, this is where we want to essentially do this bit here. So let's copy about this much. We can put this here. We don't have the user manager, which is not too scary, right? So not that bad. We don't really need to console log. We don't need to redirect. We don't even need to do anything with the user. What we can do, and I mean, just in case, right? We might use it later, but this is where we're gonna do window location, and we're just gonna navigate to /. So we're gonna return from the static page to our application, and this is where the processing is gonna happen. So for this, we will actually need the library, right? So the oidc-client library, we will need to surface it just on this page. And well, how do you do that, right? The thing that we have is in node modules, there are a couple of thousand packages in here, and I mean, you could search for oidc here, and there it will be. In the dist here, what we want to find is the minified version. Control copy this, and let's scroll all the way back down here to the oidc, and hopefully it will copy it, unless I didn't copy it. Again, scroll back up. Looks like I will have to locate solution. Okay, I guess because this is not indexed, it's not gonna show me, so I'm gonna have to struggle a little bit here, and you will have to watch me. Holy moly, what is going on? Show and explore. Oh my god. I've never struggled so much, but anyway, right? So in node modules, find the oidc folder, grab the minified file, put it in this oidc folder, and put it in there so it actually puts it in there, okay? I'm not sure why that was so hard, but there it is, okay? And the way that we reference this is the same as you usually do. So this will be right here, but we will, because this will be more of a URL type of thing, so we're gonna get redirected, and then on / or whichever address we're on, that's the point from which we want to start navigating on the address bar, where we're gonna be fetching this oidc client. Okay, now that we have here, what's gonna happen in here is there should be an oidc client, whatever, maybe we'll find it, or maybe not. Not so important. The important thing is that we'll have the oidc namespace, and in here we'll have the user manager, right? So we new up the user manager as always, and we can pass some settings in there which are not too important at this point, unless the storage settings. So, but for now we can check if we are gonna get that error. So let me go up here and drop down this node modules folder. Let's configure this. So the way that we're gonna navigate to this HTML page, we will need to change our oidc, what's it called, our redirect URI. So on here, let's specify sign in callback.html. We'll copy this URL. We're gonna go back into startup, and we are going to place this on the redirect URIs. Okay, and let's not forget that / over there. And once we have here, well, I mean, once we have this, let's go ahead and try to see if this works, right? So give this a refresh. Let's log out, and maybe we didn't have a session, but there it is. We had a bad request. So that's what it's gonna look like to a user. Let's go ahead, test password and sign in. Looks like we've gotten an error. So let's take a look at the console. Okay, so we hit the page. However, we get a no code in response. So that just means that the configuration that we did in our initial application, so right here, isn't fully transferred to here, right? So the configuration that we pass here and the one that we're passing here isn't synced up correctly, because we've seen the login work before. We've transferred to the new bit. It's a configuration issue. So there are two primary things that we want to specify here. Response mode, will set that to query, and not equal, this is not C# land. And going back to the index page, we want to set the user store essentially as well. So let's put that here, and we don't really need that import there. And because we are not in static type land, we can do something along the lines of this. Okay, so going back here, if we go to web storage state, the constructor accepts settings, which is, I think, what we want to set here as well. Or actually, wait, maybe it will probably make more sense to do it this way. Okay, so because we're grabbing the type of the user manager this way, we can do the same with the storage, really. Let's make sure we add the commas here, and this should be, I think, more or less it. Let's go ahead, give this a refresh. A matching state found in storage, so that's okay. Let's press logout here, so that's fine. Okay, so we're back here, we're logged out. Login, test, password, and there we go. So the authentication there gets processed really quickly, and we're redirected back to our application ASAP. So that's good. Let's go back to index.view. We no longer need this part since the sign-in callback takes care of that. Now, when time comes to refreshing our access tokens and ID tokens, we are going to use a similar approach, but that's going to be a different video, okay? And that's when we're going to be using the silent redirect URI. We want to go back to our comfort zone of using Google Chrome, and to do that, we need to transfer our Nuxt application to using certificates, okay? So instead of hosting it on HTTP, we're going to be hosting it on HTTPS. If you're comfortable with the current setup, you can skip this part, okay? Because that's literally all it gives me, and plus a little bit of configuration and knowing how to use some tools, right? But other than that, you can probably just watch this video and not copy this part, so you've been warned, okay? What we want to do is, let's go ahead and just look for make cert, mk cert, and this should bring you on this GitHub page that has about 25,000 stars. Amazing, right? This tool is amazing. What you want to do is you want to go on releases here in this tab here, or I think, nope, there, it's not theirs. So yeah, go on releases. What you want to do is download the one that matches your operating system. I'm on Windows, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that. This should add it to my downloads directory over here, right? So that's there. Cool. Now, what you do is you scroll down a little bit and you look for the commands, right? So let's go ahead and open the PowerShell window here. So because we're in this directory, but we don't have it as a command line tool, we will have to reference it from here. So there it is. Let's go ahead, type install. I have it installed before, so the certificate authority isn't actually going to be, so it's just going to say you already installed it. Cool. Next thing, grab the second command. You can, what's it called? Let's paste this here. I'll jump to the back and I'll make cert. And what I'll do is I'll delete all the example stuff. That's if you need it. We're only doing localhost 127.0.0.1. That is localhost as well. And that last part, I have no clue, right? But that's all we want to run. Cool. So close this. Literally, these two commands don't include the example stuff. Easy. Right, now we're in the downloads. Let's go ahead, grab these two, Control X to cut to the root of our web client and paste this here. Okay, my Solution Explorer is not liking me right now, so there it is, right? So super secret stuff. Make sure you do not leak it. Not actually. So let's go ahead and name this server.key. So this is a key. We can see this by this name here. So the beginning of the private key. The second one is the certificate. Okay. So let's go ahead and call this server.cert, certificate. Okay. And that's essentially it. So we have a server key and a server certificate. Let's go ahead, close these two, close this, and all we're gonna do is we'll have the Nuxt config.js open. Now in here, what we want to do is we want to configure the server part, and in here we just want to specify the HTTPS options. And super simple, the same way that we named them, we will be providing a key where we will need to resolve the path and directory. So this is going to be that webpack-ish config style. I think we want path from path, and we want fs from fs. Okay. So path, their name, I think their name, or what am I doing? I want to grab the file, I want to read file sync, and this is where I provide the path. So relative, their name, and this is where we will say server key. Let's copy this line, and at the beginning we'll say cert, and we'll say certificate here as well. Okay, so understandable. It shut it down. It's shut itself down gracefully, and all we have to do now is start it. So if it didn't shut down for you, good. Shut it down and start it again. Okay. What I want to do now is, or actually the primary thing that we're going to see here is this HTTPS, right? So this is actually now on HTTPS. HTTP1 will not work, right? So HTTPS, first thing that we are is greeted with an error. I did have to spend some time to figure out what is going on here. So just to take you through some steps that I've taken. So this sort of error, we've seen it before, and this was my sort of reasoning about this. Anytime we've seen this error, it was mostly around server-side rendering failing on the backend. So what I did first is I kind of commented out this dispatch in the server side, and that worked. So then what I did is, well, that was just basically the confirmation, right? So that was there. Let's go ahead and see what it's actually complaining about, right? So I try cut this and see what the error is. Okay, so refreshing this again, looking in the browser, so there's a big error, but essentially some weird error. And the primary thing that you can see here is what type of request was it sending. And the thing here, so base URL HTTPS, but it's pointing to port 5000. Okay, so this is where we want to make it point to port 5001. Let's go into our nuxt.config.js, and where we put Axios here, let's just specify 1001, and just to be a little bit more explicit, we're just going to set this to HTTPS, and for the HTTPS option here, we are going to set it to true. Okay, so save that, wait for this to reload, come back to our application, and refresh. Okay, so we still get an error, but now looking at it, unable to verify the first certificate. So the problem here that I looked up is that the development server isn't actually able to verify the certificate created by the CA, the development certificate authority for our .NET Core application. Okay, so there is a server here, there's a server here, there is a certificate for this server, there is a certificate for this server. Our computer is at the back here with the two certificate authorities for each of these servers, and these servers are not aware of each other's certificate authorities, right? So they don't trust each other. So because it's server side, we don't actually need HTTPS. The communication as well in production environment will be done on the local machine. Okay, so it's practically going to be instant. So coming back to here, what we actually want to do with this Axios configuration is we want to split it up to be different for our client and for our server. Okay, I should probably see my hands. I'm like stretching them out here, but no. For our server and our client, they should be different. So public runtime configuration, and private runtime configuration. So if you watch my previous episodes, you'd know what this part is, but essentially, to just kind of refresh your mind, public runtime configuration is kind of like your environment variables, but they're available on the client side and server side. Private runtime configuration is only available on server side, and it will override any public runtime configuration. Okay, so we can grab this Axios bit here, and we can put this here, right? And let's put this here as well. And HTTPS will be false for private, and we'll go over port 5000. Okay, so saving that, waiting for that to rebuild. Yep, going back to the application, giving this a refresh, and now we should be getting our tricks, and everything is back to normal, except now we're able to sign out as well. Okay, so sign out won't appear there, but let's observe a good sign out and sign in. Okay, so it's actually good that we're testing this, because the fact that we've changed the client to be hosted on HTTPS, what we actually want to do is we want to go and reconfigure the other stuff regarding our redirect URI. So HTTPS, post logout, redirect URI, HTTPS, that bit will be HTTPS as well. Authority will be HTTPS 5001. And what we want to do now is go into our startup here. And again, all these redirect URIs, we want to change them to be HTTPS as well. And I think that will be okay. Let's actually just get this in Google Chrome. So let me open this up, and whoa, that's a little bit too far. There we go. Oh wait, that was HTTP. So HTTPS, single Chrome, our favorite browser. There it is. Let's go ahead and log in, test, password, sign in. Okay, not secure, whatever. Try to log out, and we're back here. Okay, so sign in, sign out. It's working fine over HTTPS in Google Chrome, right? So we're back to our normal comfortable space, a little bit of configuration. Now you know how to generate self-signed certificates. So if you're gonna go work with an Angular application or a Vue.js application or React, and you need your dev server to be secured with HTTPS, this method works with all of them as well, right? So for now, this will be it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section. I also stream on Wednesdays and Sundays. Make sure to join my Discord server to find out when I actually go live. I'll see you in my other episodes.